Okay, so I wish I knew how to introduce this man, but he has as many titles as I think every conqueror ruler once in the land and the world of Game of Thrones. So we're just going to stick with Mike G, calling in, FaceTiming in, Zooming in, YouTubing in, whatever in. After a radio hit today, writing about the Patriots at Boston Sports Journal yesterday, other hits. How would you like to go by today? That'll be the first question here.
Let's just say overwhelmed, Mike Giardi. Is that fair? It's just it's a wide. That's just one word will cover it. Yeah, that's how I feel at some points. I'm like, wait, what's today? Where am I supposed to go? Quick story: as I'm doing WZLX, the Shirt and Leap show, twice a week. Well, yeah, once or twice a week. Thus far, I've been twice a week. Tuesday, day after the holiday. Tuesday's my day, so I send some emails, get up at 4:00 in the morning, drive over to the studio, and they're like, "Oh, Ted's here too. Ted Johnson, who's also on the Rich Shirt and Leap show." Apparently, there was an email that I either did not see or did not get that said, "Oh, we're going to treat Tuesday like it's Monday, so it'll be Ted's day." So we were both there. Great show. We had a blast for 4 hours. But yeah, just randomly showing up when I wasn't supposed to show up.
You're stumbling out of the blocks, or you're treating the race like a warm-up.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the money's going to clear, so that's a good thing, right? Like that check will be fine. I'll get paid for that. But yeah, it's been interesting. I'm not exactly what you would call a morning person, but thus far, very energized by the opportunity. Rich is freaking bouncing off the walls. He's so excited about launching this thing. So it's been fun so far.
Well, good. And I've told you this before privately. I'm very happy that you'll be on 6 to 10, as you said, once or twice a week, 100.7 WZLX. But we're here because you were at practice on Wednesday and I was not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need you to catch me up to speed in an episode where I will do as little talking probably as ever, as everyone at home just rolls their eyes in disbelief as we continue on here anyway. But there are a couple of things I want to hit because we started this way with Doug. We get a 3 out of 10 practices that we get to look at. They're non-padded. They're in shorts. Not everybody's there. Matt Judon's still away. Devon Godchaux's still away. Jelani Tavai not practicing. And Kendrick Bourne still rehabbing. And yet we can't just bypass them, right? Like this is the data that we get. It's incomplete. I don't want to make mountains out of molehills, but it's not as if I'm just going to ignore it altogether. So we'll put this into proper perspective, of course. We'll also zooming all the way the hell in on the quarterbacks because that's what we care about the most. Drake Maye, and this would be takeaway number 1, I think, and you tell me if this is a big deal or not, is still taking the third reps among the quarterbacks in team periods.
It is not a big deal. And look, I understand. We have a radio show that always says, we have a show to do today, and that's how I felt doing the news and at NBC Sports Boston. You have a show to do. Like you have to find hooks and narratives and storylines that fit and things that you can sort of dig your teeth into. So this is obviously going to be one. You spent the 3rd overall pick in the 1st round on a quarterback, which you desperately need. He's a little raw. We've talked about that leading up to it, the footwork, all these different things. So you say like, oh, he needs all the reps he can possibly get. I'm not really worried about the number of reps he's getting. I thought he got a fair amount of reps yesterday, including during one 7-on-7 period where he was off on one field while the other 2 quarterbacks were on another field. So he got every single rep there. And to me, what I've noticed in the progression here of the 3 that we've seen is he's looked more comfortable each time. And what's more important than that? Him looking more comfortable, him being decisive. And we saw little flashes. And yesterday was really the first for me, like, even though it was a 7-on-7 where I was like, oh, okay, that was not something we're used to seeing here. Not even, and again, I'm sure someone will take this out of context, not comparing him to Tom Brady, just saying, even when Brady was here, Brady was very mechanically perfect, right? He was not an off-platform thrower. Drake made a couple of off-platform throws, including one in particular that I tweeted about this morning at 7-on-7, where he dipped the arm down, and it was different. It was something that you're not used to seeing, and he has to string together all the parts. But again, you can see the reasons why he was the 3rd overall pick and why there is hope that he can be the franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think in a strange way, the best way to think about the Drake Maye experience, at least early on, right, is the flavor palette we have in New England just got opened wide the hell up. Like we have
Mm-hmm.
been, with the series of partners or quarterbacks that work from the same very small amount of spices, and now we're not just going to put a little salt on the chicken for dinner. You've got paprika now available if he wants to go sidearm. He's got all of these different things. You want to fry it, you want to bake it, you want to grill it, you want to do air fry it, like all of these different things. That was not available with the short arm pea shooter white bread quarterbacks, and there's still one on the roster, Bailey Zappi, who you wrote about yesterday. And again, I'm with you. Like, we can do a show and keep our perspective, because I'm with you. The number that is most important to me is not the number 3, the order in which he's going. It's the number of reps that he gets. So long as that's comparable to Bailey Zappi or close enough to Jacoby Brissett, that's what I care about. Speaking of numbers, and that's again for now here in May. If we get to training camp, it's still the same. That's an issue in my opinion. You'll hear from us.
That's a great point. Like, to me, and I keep saying it to people that have pushed back, including media members that have sort of pushed back on my stance on it. It's like, look, if we're in the second week of August and this is still the order and he's still third in the reps, then like, it's not panic time, but you're also going to go, well, what exactly is happening here? I'm going to need a better explanation than, well, it's just about the opportunities he gets and making the most of the reps he gets. No, but you're not. So he clearly didn't. If you're still in, like, again, we're flashing ahead. If you're still in the middle of August and you're still telling me that hasn't earned more reps and with the better talent around him, then okay, then I'll be ready to press some sort of button. It's not a panic button, but something close to it.
Speaking of panic buttons, in TD Garden, where I've been more often than not covering the Celtics run.
That basketball insider, Celtics insider.
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe you'll hear me on WZLX. Yeah. No, I'm.
We talked to your cohort, Doug Kide, a couple days ago, dropping knowledge on the Celtics.
Did a great job, I heard.
Yeah, he did.
Anyway,
he slayed it.
The reason is not to brag or to let you to brag, but we're happy to brag about Doug here anytime on the podcast. It is to say there is an actual panic button that I saw in the secondary media press box, redundant, of course, press box of TD Garden, where you're atop the highest seats where you can buy. And on this long shelf where you're all sitting and crammed together, looking down at these tiny little specks moving about the basketball court, is an actual panic button. I've had a photo of this saved since I covered like a Tuesday game against Portland. It might have been Indiana. I don't really remember, but I was up there long enough to just look around and go, oh, hey, that's a real thing. It says panic on it. I don't know if it's a joke. I don't know what the button does, but I have this picture saved for at some point in the finals or in some point in my life, because it's a meme that like you can't, I haven't been able to use. I'm very tempted and excited to use it, which is apropos nothing, because anyone panicking right now, as we just illustrated, is really wasting their time. I want to give a couple numbers though, because folks, who live for this time of year, this is the only football we get, want to know numbers like completion percentage and interceptions. And here were the numbers yesterday, according to my colleague Doug Kide, who covered this while I was away on a quick vacation. So Jacoby Brissett, excellent, 6 of 8 and 11 on 11s, 7 of 8 and 7 on 7s. Drake Maye, 4 of 6, again 2 fewer reps and 11 on 11s. Then 12 of 14 in 7 on 7. So that's a big jump in his reps in 7 on 7s. And then Bailey Zappi, who was second on the day for most of the day, but third here for obvious reasons, 6 of 9 in 11 on 11. So that's more out of the other two. And then 4 of 7, taking the fewest reps in 7 on 7s with an interception. What, if anything, stood out as much as it can in late May about what stood out about those numbers to you?
One, I thought the numbers accurately reflect how well Jacoby threw the ball yesterday. Very decisive. The ball was on the spot. When he needed to layer it in there, he layered it in there. It just, I mean, look, I think he doesn't get enough respect for being the quarterback that he is, because he's sort of been this, been viewed as a bridgy guy. And I guess, I mean, he is. That's what he's here too, right? But like, he's not an awful quarterback. Like the offense should run so much smoother and be able to do a lot more things than it did the last 2 years with the combination of Mack and Bailey. And I think, to me, that's just, as we've gone along here, again, just a short period of time that we've been able to watch, you can just see this is a competent, sometimes above average quarterback. And like, they haven't lived in that world since Mac was a rookie, and even that, some of it turned out to be fool's gold. So that definitely stood out to me. The other thing that, and again, I made the same observation from rookie minicamp, then last week, this week. Bailey physically just does not. He does. Joe Milton wasn't there. We don't know why he was absent, but he was absent. But physically, he's just not on the same plane. And even he joked about, like, I don't know what I was doing as a kid, like why I didn't get this arm strength or that size that the rest of the guys have. But I mean, he's definitely the outlier in the group as far as that goes. And then when it came to Drake, just it wasn't perfect. There were a couple throws. You're like, like. Through a fade that was inside and it was short and it just wasn't a good throw. There's going to be a few of those, but like some of the accuracy that you're seeing out of him, again, when you think about like the skill set that he brings with his arm talent, his overall physical talent, that if he can just marry his upper and lower halves consistently, like you can see, again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. You can see what he's capable of and why there's such high hopes about his, future potential.
Are you ready to win this offseason? Like a long Drake Maye touchdown pass down the sideline, 7-on-7s, maybe OTAs, could be minicamp. Well, we're going to go from the field to the court to your phone because Prize Picks is stepping up its game as America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members ahead of the finals, because the finals mean more on Prize Picks, and so do the star players. All you need to do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your money. Again, with Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite team, the Celtics or sports, baseball, maybe the Red Sox, this summer. You just make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds, need to make a pick or more on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. That's it. I've used it for the same reasons I just outlined. It's simple, it's easy, and if I'm watching the Sox at home, heck, I'll fire up Prize Picks, put a little money down, and get a lot more back. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 on Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So going back to the point about the order of reps, there's clearly a reason here for this, right? Every part of a practice is planned out, scripted very specifically for a very specific reason. And this, based on their comments publicly, and what makes the most sense to me is that they're just trying to make him prove it. Now, I think there's probably a point at which you're not asking the kid you drafted 3rd overall, prove you're better than Bailey Zappi, and that might be the second week of August, where if he just stunk it up, you would roll him out there anyway because you need the kid to be good if you as a team also want to be good in the near future. But in the meantime, in May, is that persuasive to you? Like I threw out other reasons to Doug last week, but I think this is where I've landed. They just are saying, we're going to live up to our word here. You got to prove it. You got to earn it. That's competition.
I think I wrote that 2 weeks ago for the same thing. And I maybe had the conversation when I was being browbeated by some of the other media members about it. I'm like, oh, it's ridiculous. He's the 3rd pick. He doesn't have to prove. You just don't hand it to him. Like, look, Jaden Daniels is walking into a situation where your backup is Marcus Mariota. You don't want to play Marcus Mariota pretty much under any circumstance. He's pretty much been unplayable for a couple of years. Like, he's not that guy. They're in a different stage. You're looking at this saying, we don't, like they have Terry McLaurin, they have Dotson, they have some pieces around him. You're like, well, we have Kendrick Bourne coming back from an ACL and Polk is the 2nd round, but you don't have the same level of security, I think, or at this point, like the high level, the ceiling of some of the pieces around him. So it's like, all right, well, like we're still not totally there yet. We're going to bring in Brissett. We're going to work him in. And yeah, like he's going to absorb like the conversations that he's having with Brissett. My brain's all over the place here. Conversations he's having with Brissett during the course of a practice. Like to me, I mean, you were there last year. Like he and Bailey didn't even want to be in the same field together. Like Mac's over here and Bailey's over there. Like you talk about like, well, we're doing everything we can to help whoever's the starter to win football games. I'm not saying they didn't do it. I'm not sure that they did do it either. I don't know that either guy went out of their way to help the other guy. Whereas here, Jacoby's like, man, like he's got to watch me, but I'm watching him too. And we're talking and why did you do this? And why did you do that? And then he might do something. So wow, you did like, what did you see there? And like in a good way. So I just think that there's so much going on that can't possibly ascertain from just sitting on the hill and just watching them. But those sorts of snapshots, I think they kind of get left out. Like, I just think there's a lot of good happening there. And to me, it's okay for him to be sort of told, like, hey, this is competition, man. You don't just get it. You're 21 years old. Like, and we just went through a thing with a quarterback that, he had to earn it to a certain degree. Cam sort of gave it to him also. Like, there's all kinds of stuff there. Like, we're not gonna try to make the same missteps that we did before.
Yeah, I think that's a way to look at it. And again, you go back to the numbers I rattled off in team periods. Not my numbers, courtesy of Doug. He was there. I was not. Drake Maye took 20 reps in team periods. Jacoby Brissett had 16. Bailey Zappi had 16. And it matters the caliber of defense you're facing, the caliber of the players you're playing with. Obviously, that's representative of you with the starting offense, second team offense, third team offense. But again, he's getting the volume that he needs, making a transition that the other two guys are not, even in a new offense, which, as we've said and everyone's pointed out, Jacoby Brissett played in 2022, had a career year at these controls with Alex Van Pelt. Again, it was a lot of different personnel there in Cleveland, but that experience matters a whole lot, especially when, okay, here's a clear-cut starter. What you're really asking is, why is he second behind Bailey Zappi? If he's getting more work than Bailey Zappi, then that's fine to me. You also wrote about Ben McAdoo the other day and his involvement, and his role is really interesting to me, not just because, I don't know, like, he's a guy with a checkered coaching resume, let's put it like that. And everyone's very happy to have him for that head coaching experience. Never mind how it went, and he's going to be involved in the way that you really have three cooks in this kind of quarterback kitchen with him, Van Pelt, and TC McCartney, who I think is going to take a backseat to the older, more experienced coaches. But as far as the development around Drake, is Ben McAdoo's presence the most interesting part of that? What are we missing about this? And if it's not related to Ben McAdoo, what is it?
I would just say the first thing, where you mentioned the three different people, I'm still a little bit concerned about too many voices. And I would like that, Gerard made the point a couple weeks ago that Alex is the lead dog, but I've seen Ben spend a lot of time with Drake so far. And in fact, the piece that I wrote, that I kind of started off with, they were going through individual drills last week, and we've talked all about the footwork that Maye needs to work on. And Ben McAdoo, I have like 8 different videos or pictures where McAdoo is looking at his feet. He's doing the whole thing and he's throwing it. Ben's eyes aren't coming up.
School of offense.
Yeah, yes, he did. Yeah, he's looking at his feet, and then there's, hey, do this, and then like came back, does the drill again. Then there's a pat on the shoulder, like, oh, whatever I told you to do foot-wise, you must have done. And I just think that's pretty interesting. Like, he seems like he's pretty dialed in on that part of it. And I think when you research his checkered history, he might just be one of those guys again who is not cut out to be a head coach. Josh McDaniels, 0 for 2. There's plenty of guys that have proven to be really good coordinators or good coordinators that just couldn't make it as a head coach. I think obviously his head coaching days I would say that ship has sailed for McAdoo. But what he did with Sam Darnold in the second half, particularly back third of the year in Carolina, and his 1 year in Carolina, was pretty impressive. Like, no one's actually gotten that kind of production out of Sam Darnold, where I think he had the third best QBR from week 12 on, threw for 250, 275, and 342 in successive weeks. Like that's the sort of thing where, and Sam had great things to say about him. We know Geno Smith absolutely loves him, for standing up for him, and, kind of lost his job because he played, at least partly because he played Geno Smith and benched Eli Manning. But like, Smith still to this day talks about the influence that, McAdoo had on him, professionally, personally. And I think these are all good things that when you're trying to develop this important piece, that you have some people that have been through it with younger players and understand how to relate to them. And I think he's, Donald speaks highly of him. Geno speaks highly of him. I think that counts for something. And certainly we know with Alex, like, he's pretty much, as I said, the people in Cleveland would tell me, like, if Alex tells you that this guy can be good, then you should trust it, because he's really good at identifying talent and helping it develop. Now, whether he's a good offensive coordinator, none of us know. But in terms of his coaching ability, he seems to be pretty good at that as well. So I think I think they've set him up in a decent way, as long as they don't get the message confused from all the voices.
Right. Let's go to another coach because, Gerard Mayo now about 4 months on the job. And
Mhm.
he's reminded us a bunch of times we're 0-0. It's a honeymoon period. That goes for him when we ask about his relationship with Elliot Wolf, the players in the building, setting this new culture. That's great. And they're taking new strides and steps. As another friend of the pod, Jeff Howe, detailed in the long story today about the Athletic. But until we get there to the football, to the turbulence, to the choppy waters
Yeah.
that we're inevitably going to come up this season, what we really have to work on is his dealings with the media. And this is not to give those any extra weight like you might on certain radio shows or that they add or take away points on the scoreboard. But I think there is something to be said for it as you learn about a guy who's in a new role. You got to command the media before you go command the room. And everything we've heard inside is that he can command a room. He's done it. That's part of the reason he's a head coach now. But it's having a prepared message, knowing how to deliver it, stepping over and avoiding different minds. And it's been interesting to me, as someone who's written a lot about Gerard, interactions with the media, got a lot of pushback about a particular column from the owners' meetings when he spilled a glass of OJ on himself after making a joke about it at the start. And that has been some missteps. He acknowledged yesterday, hey, I'm being evaluated. Stacey James,
Yeah.
our PR person, give me stuff to work on. Have you seen anything in the way that he's changed talking to us as he learns on the fly? Again, and that covers with the media, with the team, players, development, meetings, all these different things that shows you he's already learning in a way. Is there anything interesting about the way that Gerard is engaged with the media so far?
I think he's fallen back on a few tenets or a few catchphrases, if you will. Hard work works has been one that we've heard consistently. And look, it makes sense for someone who had irregular dealings with us once every 2, once every 3 weeks, whatever it was during season, because he wasn't a coordinator. Bill's way of, always getting around certain loopholes with assistant availability and all that stuff. That there were going to be some missteps because I think Gerard is he's pretty loose and can be open and I think he likes to add a little dash of humor, and I think sometimes that has bitten him a little bit early on. Again, nothing terrible, nothing like, oh my God, like doomed his entire, coaching career before it started, but like even little things like the burn some cash thing. He's laughing and he's loose and he's happy and he's just sort of feeling it in the flow of conversation, not realizing that in the moment, okay, now you just set the whole like, oh, well, we do have this money. Like, we're going to spend? Like, go get this guy, go get that guy, hit Christian Wilkins, go get Calvin Ridley, like trade for this guy. Like, this thing's going to happen overnight. And then it's like, no, they weren't even in on that guy. They only went to a certain distance with this guy. They re-signed their own guys, so they spend money on their own guys, but they got, $50 million in salary cap room. So that's sort of like, there are people that are still sort of holding that over his head. I'm not one of them, but like, I still think he's going to have to learn how to control the urge to be a little bit of the jokester, and get some laughs because like, look, especially if when they do hit the struggles, like that's not gonna, people are gonna pick on that for lack of, Bill was always stoic and stone faced and whatever worse than that, and if Gerard is like sort of smiling and joking in those moments, even if it's for like a split second, oh, what's this guy doing? Because we've been so trained that it has to be one way, and that way has been swept out the door. And this is a new era, and you're just going to have to get used to all that stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, I think that last point is the most salient one, right? Because that's a commentary as much on him as it is us. Are we used to this change? I remember his first couple of press conferences, getting emails about people who were turned off about the way he handled his introductory press conference, the easiest win of them all as far as they go with press conferences. And that's just on us to adjust to that change. It's been 20 years of the same stoic, same monotone answers, cliches. Like I would listen to questions and press conferences in recent years and be like, I know exactly where this is going, which I'm sure people were doing to me when I joined the beat and you had been on much longer. And so it's just, to some point, this is a fruitless conversation, right? Because people are like, who cares how he handles the media? But again, I think this is just representative of someone who is going to be learning in a lot of different arenas. So if he's showing, let's say, improvement with the media in the way that I think he's finding that balance, if you can be yourself, you can be open and honest. And that's what we're rooting for. Like that, I want everyone to remember that I'm rooting for the guy who's going to tell us, which means it gets to the fans, as much as we want to know and learn and be humorous and find the joy, which we just try to do in this podcast versus just you can find in other media spaces. He can do that stuff. But at some point, his self-interest is to not share those things for competitive reasons, for
Mm-hmm.
personal relationships with the building, to be consistent with his messaging. So it'll be interesting to me when he finds a real consistency, maybe not in the way that Bill ever was, but that we start to notice, okay, this is who he's going to be. Because I think there's been a little bit of change that it was to be expected.
Yep.
And it sounds like you've noticed something similar too. And he'll the ones that I find him going back to, like Bill tenants, start in the way that Bill used to start them to. Look, okay, like it's what you do with the opportunities. It's not how many. This one's
Yep.
hardworking. All those different things. And I think that's smart because a lot of what Bill did with media, as frustrating as it was excellent at staying on message with us in the same way he was with his players behind closed doors.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that when we talk to him on the Monday after a Sunday game, after he's done his Sunday press conference, that when we talk to him on the Monday, that he can actually tell me something about the game that he wouldn't answer in the post game. Like, I'm hoping we don't have that carryover from the Belichick sort of sticking by the message, because the message was then by Wednesday when we talk to him again, well, we've passed that. Well, you never explained what this was, or you never explained why you made this decision. And now we're already moved on to the next one. I hope he doesn't do that, because that will drive me crazy. Not that anyone cares whether they're driving me crazy or not. The other thing I'll say, though, you say, like, the media part of it, it is important internally, because the people above him are very media conscious, especially Robert. And if he is losing press conferences, because, again, there are people that keep score on this stuff, that have loud voices, then that can only serve to, maybe have some uncomfortable conversations there that shouldn't be had, or, maybe turn, a year or two down the road, like, well, it's not going that great, and he's still not getting better at this, or he's still not winning over the people that way. So, like, does that change the timeline? Because, again, they are very, Robert is very conscious of all that stuff.
Okay, so we still have 3 months left until football, right? Right. So we still have to wait 3 months to go to a big game, right? Wrong. You can go to the NBA Finals with Game Time, my favorite ticket app, because Game Time is making NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier to get. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, and you can find killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed to watch the Celtics in the finals with Game Time. I scroll through Game Time all the time, not even for big games like the finals. I'm going to go to the Red Sox, take the tee in, boom, have a beer outside, wait at 7:01 for a 7:05 first pitch. I'm in. I've got one of the best seats at the house, sometimes up to 60% off. And you can do this, customizing your spot, customizing your section, viewing your view from the seat in your section. And it could be last minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals, whatever you want. But in the meantime, get on down to Causeway, Game 1, Game 2, Game 5, hopefully not a Game 7, to watch the Celtics in the NBA Finals, where you can take the guesswork out of buying those finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, all you have to do is create a free account on the Game Time app and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today for last-minute tickets and the lowest price guaranteed. I don't know if we did a good job talking about how Gerard's changed in front of the media and why it's important or not, but I think we're going to move on anyway. I think some points were salient, and like the things that carry over also are, and this is a big one, expectation management. Like the example that you gave, burn some cash, right? Set an expectation very poorly for what was going to happen. And they did spend a lot of money, but it wasn't in the way that everyone took it and ran with it and understood, because he should have known that was against the backdrop of not spending, fan frustration. This is a pressure point for the media, and on and on and on, especially for the sensitivity to ownership, because he walked it back. Elliot Wolf talked it after. Again, it's not going to put points on the board. It's not going to take them off. But this is what we have to talk about here in late May. And the fact that he's changed a little bit, I think is a good thing. It shows some growth and some learning. And that's what you want after a couple of, missteps, whatever that really happened. But again, don't carry a lot of weight, a lot of gravity to them when we finally get football rolling around. Wrapping up on the 2 OTA practices here so far, quarterbacks aside, just a couple things that are catching your eye as possibly, portending well for this team, or things that stand out that you think will have don't want to say some stickiness, but could be predictive of what we see next in minicamp and then in training camp.
So without Kendrick Bourne participating, at this part, there's been a lot of Tyquan Thornton reps, and he's acquitted himself fairly well. She's shown up. He's made a couple nice catches. Again, shorts and t-shirts. Like, I'm not going to go crazy with it, but it's clear they're trying to push it a little bit. Like, this is year 3, dude. Like, we can't really wait much longer than this. So, like, here's going to be your opportunity. Show me that you're getting what we're putting in, because you struggled with that when you first came in. And some would say he still struggled last year, again, as they sort of changed offenses, or at least changed coordinators and some of the tenets of their offense. So now is another switch. Like, it's time, because they don't. I'm not sure that we've ever really seen his speed come into play like it should have, or like they hoped it would. And now is the time for that to happen. Otherwise, it's not going to happen here, because when you think about the roster spots and wide receiver
that drop.
Well, yeah,
the Chargers game. Remember?
You think, yeah, but you think about, like, there's one roster spot for wide receiver, and there's 4 or 5 NFL-ish type players that are in. I mean, you could put Juju in that conversation. Like, he might be competing for that spot. So, like, you got to show me something here. And I think at least here to this point, I haven't seen anybody throw their arms up at him. I haven't seen him make an egregious drop with nobody around him. So, like, at least a decent foot forward. I would just say Javon Baker, who is sort of already become sort of a fan favorite because of his rants on social media, which went over like a lead balloon in Foxborough. In general, the vibe there with that was, but like, okay, you said it, now got to go prove it. And yeah, he had a drop yesterday, but there were a couple moments where you see the talent, right? Like, he bounced around a little bit in college. There's some questions about maturity levels, all that sort of thing. But like, when he is right, when his head is screwed on straight, when he's focused, he can give you some of the stuff. And we saw a couple catches yesterday that made you think, like, okay, like, it's a good little, now build off it. Now be more consistent, do this. Let me see it every day. As Gerard said, if you're going to talk about it, then you got to go show it. Well, you showed some the other day. Now stack them going forward. I think another thing that jumped out to me is how Gerard pointed out that Keion White is someone that he's felt like has taken a step forward. And I look at Keion, I thought he actually played pretty well last year, especially down the stretch. I think you saw him learn from some of the mistakes he made earlier in the year, sometimes where he got tricked on plays where his eyes were in the wrong place. I remember doing a film thing on him. Hey, this is what he did the first time against Miami. He got caught up in this for 26-yard gain. He got caught up here. And then the second time they ran the same action at him, didn't get him, right? Like, so like there were a lot of signs like that over the course of the year where things that he messed up early in the year, he didn't mess up later in the year when he saw something similar or the exact same thing. And now to hear Gerard talk about it, it's not just as a player, so talking about just like being involved in the conversation, exerting a little bit more leadership, which I think talking to him last year, I'm like, he's a bright kid, but I'm not sure that he really wants to be in that role. I think he just wants to go line up against somebody and smack that guy, like, hey, this is my job and I'm going to whack this guy upside the head and I'm going to make the stop. And to hear them talk about him in that way, I think it was pretty interesting, because I wasn't sure last year that would be the next step for him in that part of it. I thought like maybe he could brush up on his pass rush moves and be a little bit more consistent as a pass rusher. I didn't expect them to be talking about some potential leadership stuff there. So I think that's something to watch, because I think he is a pretty fun player to watch. I do wonder, as I mentioned, the pass rushing stuff with him, I do wonder if just because of his size, like, he's not going to be this bendy guy at the top of this thing. It's going to be more about power. And I think he needs to just hone in on a couple of things and, make that work for him. So those were a couple of things that definitely jumped out at me. And I guess the last thing for me was just a lot of uncertainty on the offensive line. City So didn't practice. We know Cole Strange is not going to be ready to start the season. When is he going to be ready? If he's not going to be ready to start the season, you imagine Pup, then you're talking whatever, week 7, week 8, if he's lucky. So there's a lot of moving pieces there. And that may dictate, going back to the beginning of this conversation about the quarterbacks, that may dictate some of what they do with the quarterback too. Like maybe if they just don't feel comfortable with how they look up front, then maybe the debut of Drake Maye gets pushed a little bit until they find some stability there.
I'm glad you brought up Keion. He was on my list just reading those comments the other day. He's also an older prospect, so you kind of need him to figure it out now because of the physical potential that's pretty much going to be tapped, realized this year and next year, and that's it. You don't see guys make significant gains going into their late 20s. Like this is it now, mid-20s for Keion White. As far as the offensive line, I'm with you. I don't even know if Cole Strange is out until late November, early December, what the upside would be of bringing someone in cold. Again, he'll practice, he'll lift, he'll rehab, he'll be probably in the best shape of his life. But at that point, you're in the stretch run playing your most important games. And sure, they might be out of the playoffs already. But what's the upside of having a third-year player start over a rookie in Layden Robinson or some 2023 draft picks if it is Antonio Mafi and Sidney Sow, if they make the team or prove to be serviceable. So it's a tough spot for Cole Strange. It's unfortunate, but that's really a lot of the offensive line where you have more bodies than starters and questions still than answers. Okay, let's wrap on this. This is going to be fun because there's a lot more on the table. We don't have to talk about the same old stuff and then qualify and be like, oh, we don't really know. It's only OTAs. They're in short pads, blah, blah, blah. What will the Patriots, Mike Giardi, in 2026 look like? So this time, 2 years from now, coach, player, front office changes, wherever you want to start, and then we'll get into how good they are and then the biggest changes in offense and defense.
This is where Drake Maye will make the leap. This is where Drake Maye goes from the 60-ish% passer who shows you flashes of brilliance but will turn it over or make a bad read into the Josh Allenification, if you will, of him, like the big third-year leap. I think that's what you're going to get with that player. He'll be 24 years old, 23, 24 years old, like just starting to feel it now, feeling comfortable in the system. And he'll have had plenty of games to start under his belt. And that's when he launches.
What does that look like, though? Are we talking Pro Bowler? Or are we talking second team All Pro? Or are we talking
we're talking pro. No, we're talking Pro Bowler with there'll be a period of push where someone will be like, he might be an MVP candidate this year. They'll go on a little run. They'll win 4 in a row. Drake will be throwing, 275 a game, 2 touchdowns, no picks, rushing for 40, rushing for 50 and a touchdown, truck somebody, and everybody's going to get all ramped up and like, oh, he could be MVP this year. And then, they're not that great.
And we have stuff to talk about like this. We just have to invent things. Yes.
Yes. So there you go. That's one. I'll give you another one. They'll be on a different offensive coordinator.
Oh, why?
Because I don't think this was their first choice. So even though I think that Alex has the potential to be a good fit for what they're trying to do in the short term, I'm not sure that's going to be the direction they're going to want to go in the long term. And he hasn't proven to be that guy, and he's already in his 50s. So I wonder. So I'll give you that as the offense stagnated a little bit in year 2, and Drake's it was good, but it wasn't great. And like we gotta find somebody else. Let's make the change, which isn't always the wisest thing to do, as we've seen. But you wanted predictions? I'm giving you a prediction. That's a prediction.
There you go. Okay, as far as big changes, I can see the vision for a change at offensive coordinator, right? Because if you're a head coach who's presided over a losing team and you're going into year 3, that's the make or break year. And if you're going to make a change, you need a scapegoat. And we saw this in Chicago. Matt Eberflus fires his offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, who goes elsewhere and gets a job, and they make a change, and then they draft, obviously, Caleb Williams, and they're going on. But if the Bears underwhelm this year, it's Matt Eberflus who's next. So if Gerard Mayo is feeling any kind of heat, which is hard to imagine right now, as we're in, as I don't know if you've heard, the honeymoon period.
Really? Softballs, as you said. They were throwing him softballs.
Yes, 4-13 to 6-11. We'll change that pretty quickly, and that could be what's ahead of them. I, however, think AVP is going to stay. The more I've learned about him, the more I believe a little bit. Not necessarily he'll ever be a top 10 offensive coordinator here, but he's the right guy for where they are now. And if you're going to make another leap, I think that development piece is key, continuity. And I think he's more flexible schematically than we're giving him credit for. And it's also a style that's going to suit not just Drake Maye, but Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, and the way they want to play offense. However, it's interesting because they also, if Ben McAdoo is still here, I don't think he will be here in 2026. But there's a viable offensive coordinator job or candidate in-house if you were to make a change in your Drake Maye. People should not forget that over the next 2 years. I think the defensive coordinator is gone. I think DeMarcus Covington gets a head coaching job because this is a guy who has been interviewing for coordinator jobs the last couple of seasons. He's young, he's talented, commands a room, has been in this defense. And this is going to be a very, very good defense this season. I think they're going to be great in 2025 as well. When the schedule gets easier, you have players like Christian Barmore and Christian Gonzalez really stepping in, flourishing. We'll see about Keion White. We'll see about Marte Mapu, Marcus Jones. And that kind of success for a young coach who has been around the right coaches, been in the same system, that's going to speak loudly into someone who I think is willing to take a risk on him. Big picture, though, I think they're pushing for a wild card spot. And that'll be a year where you hear the Kraft say, in no uncertain terms, we better make the playoffs this year or we're making major changes. And I don't think it pertains, it could pertain to Drake Maye, but I think he's got a longer leash than most. But there would be serious shakeups on the staff. And this is a make or break year in 2026 for the Patriots.
But when he says that it's got to be a playoff year, does he really mean it? Because he said it in the previous years and then he didn't really mean it until he finally meant it.
So is it performative or is it concrete?
Yeah. I'm curious about that. I like the Covington one. I'm a little upset that I didn't think of that myself. Win for Callahan on that one. I'll take the L.
Good.
My brain is scattered. I mean, if people try to follow me today, they might need this pod and me talking today. They might need their ADD medicine, or maybe they need to send me their ADD medicine because I haven't necessarily been perfectly focused. I've seen a lot of shiny lights as I'm doing this. Ooh, but I have this thought. And how about this thought? Anyway.
Yeah.
You can make fun
of
me.
I'm going to leave that word. Give me something else though in 2026. I mean, a lot will change. A lot. We're both in on Drake Maye. We're in on them. I think you're with me as a wild card team. Is there? Because I look at this equation also and go, okay, who's Drake Maye throwing to? Number one receivers don't hit free agency anymore. They're just like quarterbacks. You're not signing an offensive tackle. They're going to continue to need to hit on the draft. And that might answer as much of will the Patriots progress? Will they get back to the playoffs in year 3? As much as is Drake Maye going to be good? Because if he's not surrounded, as we know, and protected, and the offense is not weaponized around him, they're not going anywhere. So how do they make that happen?
Jalen Polk is a 1,000-yard receiver with 8 touchdowns in 2026, exceeding even my initial sort of impression of what he could be as a player. And I think you bring up a good point with the receivers and the way they're getting paid. And of course, people want the Patriots to go get that guy. And even I've said hey, if you get that guy for a second rounder at this point, do it. Because I didn't think they were at the point before the draft that they could give up picks to go get a guy. But when you start to see the money, Brandon Ayuk is the name that he's staying away from OTAs. He's going to want $30+ million a year. I don't know. I love him. I think he's a terrific player. I don't know that he's a $30 million a year player. And I wonder if they ever see themselves getting into that market or if what the real find now is to just keep drafting guys and keep developing and hope that you can keep your guys. I mean, there was a report last week while you were gone that maybe the Vikings tried to trade up to get Malik Neighbors. And in doing so, they would have parted ways with Justin Jefferson. And you say, why would you part ways with Justin Jefferson? Because Justin Jefferson is going to get paid $35+ million a year. Is going to want it all guaranteed. He's trying to be, the quarterback thing, do the quarterback money thing. And he's awesome. He's a terrific player. Can you find somebody who can give you 85, 90% of that doesn't cost you that, or is on a rookie deal? Because we've seen some of these rookie receivers come in and make the big splash. And I'm wondering if we're going to start to get the pushback on the big wide receiver contracts and the way to go about that, because the college football is all about spread offenses and throwing it all over the place, is that you could find a guy. You could find a guy that can approximate that. And maybe every once in a while when you throw the dart, you find the guy that's the number one for the next 5 years before you move on from him and his ridiculous contract.
Yeah. There's a lot there. And I think the money in the markets change, right? They ebb and flow. The corner market came down way farther than anyone expected, self-included, a year and a half ago, after it looked like they were approaching money where the best guys were going to get between 20 and 25 million. Then it was going to keep climbing because after quarterback and receiver, the next important guy is who's stopping the quarterback, the pass rusher, or the receiver, of course, in the quarterback instance. And it didn't. And part of that is the supply, who's hitting the market, who wants to get paid, as much as what teams are valuing or thinking that they're going to find the next market inefficiency by, okay, instead of spending an extra 10, 15 on a quarterback or perhaps wide receiver upcoming, we'll spend it on an inside linebacker like Roquan Smith has transformed that defense in an age where a lot of media folks like you and me were going, oh, well, off-ball linebacker actually doesn't mean as much. Oh, just ask the Baltimore Ravens, almost AFC champion Baltimore Ravens, how that works. So there's a lot there, but I think it's probably is going to be the draft. Like you said, just taking those guys, and they would love it if Polk or Baker hit sooner rather than later. Who doesn't? But you just might not know for a little bit, or at least till 2025, and then in 26, then you, I suppose you could trade for Justin Jefferson. But at the same point, Mike, they're going to need to spend more than they already have now to stay on track with the cash floor, the cash spending floor. So that's another part of how much they can spend next year. They can spend in 2026.
What if left tackle their hopes and dreams for left tackle in 2024 don't pan out, and then there's a left tackle that kicks free?
I'm so glad you called them hopes and dreams and not plans and like something more concrete, because Chukwuma Okorafor and Caden Wallace, again, best of luck. I hope this works out for one of you. I just don't see it. And that doesn't, it feels like a wish.
Very hard to get. That's why I'm really hoping that, and why I was a little bit, again, it's May. I'm not concerned, but like, I'd really like to see 4 guys and then figure out left tackle. Because, like, it's not ideal if your left tackle is the weakest link of the group. But if you could tell me I got 4 good, solid pros and I have to help the left tackle from time to time, okay, if I'm a capable offensive coordinator, I can make that work. It's not perfect, but I can make it work. But if you're telling me my left tackle is not that good, and I'm not sure about my left guard, and like I'm not sure about my right guard, and some people are worried about the right tackle in the kind of shape that he came back in thus far. Like, I don't know. Like, there's just a lot of, all of a sudden you're like, well, crap. I don't have 4 solid guys right now. Maybe I can count on 1 guy, and that's the guy in the middle. Like, so that's something.
Yeah.
She'll look down the road, the crystal ball of what you're going to spend your money on.
I was thinking who might retire then. And David Andrews, we know his contract is going to be up by then. He'll have to figure it out. I think he's already said he wants to just go back down to Georgia, probably be a high school coach, work on his farm and fish. And that seems a lot of sense. Jonathan Jones is in a contract year now. That's a guy who took a discount with his last contract. I think would stay. You think Jonathan Jones is on staff in 2026?
That's a good question,
man. Just got married.
Yeah, he does, but he also likes he's flying, like he's got his, like, I wonder if he pulls a Hightower and it's a couple years before he wants to jump back in. Like, hey, I gave a lot. I beat up my body. He's had multiple surgeries, this whole thing. Like, let me and the wifey and the kids just kind of like, let's just decompress for a minute. I can do some podcasts with James White and some of the ex-players, and like, come on with Callahan, Giardi, if he ever gets that podcast launched, like, do that. And then, yes, I keep my name in it, but then, like, a couple years later, come back and get into the game. Because I think Hightower, like, as much as he said I was still coaching when I wasn't coaching, because I was still like watching and getting really involved. It's the grind, man. It's there early, staying late. For someone who takes care of his body, sometimes I don't think you can take care of your body the way you want to when you're a coach. For all the meetings and all the crap that they have to go through. So yeah, I wonder. But that's a good one. He's definitely he could do it. I think he's a smart enough guy that he could definitely make the transition if he wants to.
Definitely played safety, been in nickel, played outside. Let's end on this. I feel like we're missing some big hanging fruit here, but I just can't reach it. Like we agree there'll be a wild card team. There'll be some coaching changes. Mm-hmm. We don't know who's going to be in free agency, where they'll be in the draft. If I had to guess, now in 2025, I think that's when they take their offensive tackle in the first round, because a part of the front office's philosophy now is to do what's the obvious thing: take the best players as we see them. We'll work around them. It's not fit that we're obsessed with. So I think that makes a lot more sense to me. I said DeMarcus Covington will be a head coach at that point, which means the Patriots have a vacancy at defensive coordinator. Brian Belichick is the most experienced assistant on staff as far as being in New England. Jerry Montgomery, new defensive line coach, is here. We know Dante Hightower's there. Drew Wilkins is walking around. Who's the next? Mike Pellegrino, fellow Italian Mike over here. Who's the next DC?
Pellegrino was the new DC. Would be very interesting for us.
What did Ivan Fears? Oh no, Ivan Fears called Vinny Sinceri, ex-running backs coach, like the crazy Italian or loudmouth Italian.
Yes.
Yeah, that wasn't Pellegrino.
Yes. Well, I mean, but that he could have thrown that dart in that. Yes. Yeah, he could have thrown the dart in that direction as well. I don't know that they have the guy on the staff.
You think Brian Belichick can do it?
I think he could. I think he could. I don't know. So many people are. Because of the whole nepotism thing, we're never willing to give Steven or Brian credit for being good coaches. But when you're in the locker room, I've been in the locker room, we talk to guys all over the place, and
they respect him.
People off the record would tell you nah, he's a good coach. He knows who he's talking about. He helped me do this or he did that. So could he do it? Yes. Do I think it'll end up being him? No. I don't know if that guy's on the staff unless somebody, what if Hightower in the next 2 years he gets it, and he makes the quick ascent. And it's easier to do when you have Gerard as someone who played linebacker as well and coached defense for a number of years, sort of there to help, sort of walk him through it. So Hightower, that's where I'm going now. Go Hightower.
2 years of coaching. Welcome back. And now you're just DC over everybody else. That's too soon for me. But I think the Brian Belichick point, as far as you can't see it, is a fair one, because I also think he's someone who, and this goes for other coaches, is very happy being the position coach, coaching safeties for the New England Patriots. And those safeties have been great the last few years, where he's been, I think, since 2020. So he's a good coach. We've heard on and off the record from them. But some guys don't want to be in charge of the whole room, because then you lose the intimate personal relationships with the 5-6 guys that you really work with every single day and get more hands-on. And people don't understand, and Gerard said this, I thought there'd be a lot more X's and O's involved.
Yeah.
I know that's not the case, and I'm way the hell on the outside. No, because as higher up you go up the ladder, again, assistant position coach, coordinator, head coach, the further away you get from the hands-on technical teaching, the real coaching of the job. You're more administrative, big picture planning. So he just might not want to do that. And the personality might be, as a way of just, I really like what I'm doing now. I'm good at it. And he might want to be passed over. Maybe co-DCs, or they bring back somebody like, Josh Boyer's out there somewhere. There are a lot of ex-defensive assistants who are around. I think Flo would come back, but they would make it work. All right. Final thought?
I need a nap. Papa needs a nap over here.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. Well, I appreciate you, Mike Giardi, the Boston Sports Journal. WZLX, once or twice a week, Rich Shirt and Leap Show, 6 to 10 a.m. Please listen to Mike, listen to Ted Johnson, listen to Doug Kyle when he's on, and Mike Hurley, all friends of the podcast. Only Hurley has not been on here because for a while he had his own podcast, and now he's got his own freaking show, which is, I'm sure, a podcast. So listen there. See Mike on NBC Sports Boston. I hope to see you soon. We've talked about this for a while and have not had beers yet. That needs to end this summer, okay?
It does. There's no question about it.
Excellent.
I blame you for that.
That's very fair. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks.